Today I'm showing you step by step how to make this outstanding Raffaello cake. I'll talk you through my entire recipe development process of transforming the classic Raffaello candy into an entremet cake, how I created the most spectacular cake cut I've ever made, and how I developed this elegant cake design. My name is Louise and I'm a self-taught cake artist. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a show-stopping Raffaello cake. From inside and out, this cake is truly a manifestation of the classic Raffaello turned into an entremet cake. Because this cake showcases coconut and almond as the main flavors, it has creamy and crunchy textures, an all-white cake design, and even whole Raffaello balls hidden inside. I'm going to show you the process behind developing this cake recipe, how I have combined different flavor profiles and textures to transform the classic Raffaello into an entremet cake, and last but not least, how to create this magnificent cake cut. To make this cake, I'm also going to show you how to master the following techniques. How to make a moist Almond Joconde cake, a fudgy Lemon Ganache, a crunchy Almond Coconut Praliné, a smooth coconut mousse, a shiny mirror glaze, and last but not least, how to create this magnificent cake cut. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new tutorials. I'm going to show you how to make the following layers. Almond Joconde with coconut milk, coconut, almond and lemon crunch, Raffaello layer, Lemon Ganache, coconut and almond praliné, coconut mousse, mirror glaze, and chocolate decoration. Okay, let's get started. Since we're making a Raffaello cake, the main flavors had to be coconut and almond. I therefore decided to make a praliné combining these two flavors. When I decided to make this Raffaello cake, I knew I wanted to create a cake cut with the full Raffaellos inside. I therefore decided to use a cake mold where you would be able to cut the cake and get one full Raffaello per cake piece. This means that the assembling process of the insert layers is a bit different from our other cakes, as we're basically starting upside down, as the cake inserts here will be flipped around. I therefore started out by making coconut and almond praliné that actually will be the top of the cake insert inside the cake. I make praliné by toasting shredded coconut and almonds and caramelizing sugar. Once all the ingredients have cooled off, I blend the caramelized sugar and almonds to a nut butter praliné with a strong food processor before adding the toasted coconut. Then I blend the two into a liquid nut butter praliné. Coconut oil is rich in saturated fats compared to other nuts, which means that it will set firmer. I therefore adjusted the coconut and almond ratio in order to get a coconut flavored praliné. I pour a layer of the praliné in the mold and then put it in the freezer while preparing the next layer. My first idea for this cake was a cake cut where the Raffaellos would be visible inside. So I wanted to make sure that I added as many Raffaellos as possible to this cake. I therefore lined up Raffaellos inside the cake mold that I gently glued to the praliné with a little melted white chocolate to make sure that they stay in place when I'm gonna pour on the ganache. In this way, when you cut the cake, you will be able to see a full Raffaello inside. The traditional Raffaello doesn't contain lemon, but I personally don't like too sweet cakes, so I wanted to make sure that I also added some freshness to this cake. I therefore decided to make a lemon ganache to encase the Raffaellos. I actually initially made a lemon ganache that also contained coconut flavor, but I just decided that I prefer to have a more pure lemon flavor to add more acid to the cake. I make the ganache by heating heavy cream and lemon juice almost to a boil before pouring it over white chocolate. I first considered making a ganache that would have a more truffle/bonbon-like texture, but in order for the ganache to encase the Raffaellos properly, I knew this would have a too thick consistency. So I ended up making my favorite lemon ganache instead that I knew would work in terms of flavor and consistency. I hand blend the ganache and put it in a piping bag, as this makes it easier to distribute the ganache between the Raffaellos. When piping the ganache, you want to make sure here to cover all the edges and holes between the Raffaellos, as there otherwise will be visible air bubbles inside when cutting the cake. I fill the ganache in the mold until it just covers the Raffaellos, as I wanted the next layer to start by the top of the Raffaellos. Then the ganache needs to set in the freezer before we can add the next layer. For the crunch layer, I was debating whether to keep it just to coconut and almond, as this is still the main flavors of a Raffaello. But in the end, I decided to add lemon zest to add further freshness to the cake, as I just didn't want the cake to be too sweet, which easily can happen when working with mainly almond and coconut, as they both have more sweet flavor profiles. I make the crunch layer by mixing leftover praliné from earlier, feuilletine and fresh lemon zest. As mentioned, since the coconut in the praliné sets firmer, I also added a bit of melted cocoa butter to ensure a nice consistency for the crunch. Here, cocoa butter is great to use as it loosens up the consistency of the praliné without adding any flavor. I put a layer on crunch on top of the ganache, level the surface, and then put the cake back in the freezer while preparing the next layer. For the last cake insert, so the bottom of the cake, I decided to bake a moist Almond Joconde, because this cake is great to use in layer cakes like this one, and it's also great for absorbing liquid, which allowed me to brush it with coconut milk. I start out by mixing almond flour, sugar and eggs in one bowl. In another bowl, I whip in egg whites and sugar to a stiff meringue by gradually adding the sugar for an ideal incorporation of the two elements. The meringue is then gently folded into the almond/egg mixture, where I mix around 1/3 of the meringue and then the rest, as this ensures a more even mixing of the two elements. Here it's important just to gently mix the batter so we don't beat the air out of the egg whites or our meringue, as that eventually will deflate our Joconde. Lastly, I'm stirring in flour and butter. The dough is poured onto a baking sheet and baked for 6 to 8 minutes at 210 degrees until lightly golden. To make the cake fit the mold, I'm using a 16 cm diameter and 8 cm diameter pastry rings to cut a cake with a hole in the middle. To add a bit of moisture and coconut flavor, I'm brushing the Joconde with coconut milk before putting it on top of the crunch layer. Now the cake needs to freeze overnight. To add something light and airy to the cake, I decided to make a coconut mousse. Initially, I was debating whether to make an almond coconut mousse instead of just focusing on coconut. Yet, I decided that a pure coconut mousse would give the smoothest texture and be a great flavor addition to the other elements in the cake. To make the mousse, I start out by melting chocolate and heating heavy cream and coconut cream almost to a boil. Then I stir in soaked gelatin before pouring the hot cream over the chocolate. This mousse recipe contains white chocolate, as it balances the coconut flavor super well and gives the mousse a nice and creamy consistency. In order to get a prominent coconut flavor, I'm also using coconut cream instead of coconut milk. While the mixture cools to lukewarm, I'm whipping heavy cream to a lightly whipped foam and gently fold it into the chocolate coconut mixture. I pour the mousse in a bigger silicone mold with 2 pieces of acetate baking sheet and gently press the frozen cake down in the mousse with the praliné facing downwards. Since this is a Raffaello cake and I wanted the outside of the cake to resemble coconut, I wanted to make a fully white cake. I therefore created a white mirror glaze where I compared the color to Raffaello to make sure that the glaze would have a slightly more cold white color to create some contrast. I make the glaze by soaking gelatin, heating sugar, water, heavy cream and glucose syrup almost to a boil before pouring it over white chocolate. Once mixed and the white food coloring paste has been added, the glaze needs to cool to 35 to 34 degrees. I placed the fully frozen cake on a baking cooling rack and poured a 34 to 35 hot glaze over the cake. Due to the temperature differences, the glaze will stick and cover the cake nicely with a shiny surface. For the decoration, I wanted to frame the cake with different chocolate ribbons. For an elegant finish, I sprayed the ribbons with chocolate pearl spray, as I think this gives a nice shimmer effect versus keeping the natural white chocolate color. I first put the whitest ribbon around the cake, put a bit of melted chocolate on the bottom in order to glue the second ribbon around the cake. For the final chocolate ribbon, I put it on top of the cake around the hole in the middle, so the chocolate ribbon can encase the Raffaellos I will put here. And since this is a Raffaello cake, we gotta stuff as many Raffaellos here as possible. If you want to learn more about how I create the chocolate ribbons for this cake, you can check out my online chocolate decoration courses on my website. In the courses, I also teach you how to temper chocolate and how to create my 10 signature decorations that I use on all my cakes. Lastly, I'm decorating with white flowers to keep the color scheme white and cream colored. So this is how I created my version of a Raffaello Entremet Cake. I'm truly so happy about how this cake turned out, and I love the fully white design that to me resembles Raffaello. I also love how this cake elevates the classic Raffaello candy from inside and out with different flavors and textures, transforming the essence of a Raffaello into an elegant Entremet cake with the most beautiful cake cut. It truly is like eating Raffaello just in a cake, because we have all the main flavors, almond and coconut, something crunchy, waffle is, which we know from the Raffaello, something creamy as well, and we have full pieces of Raffaello. Like, to me, it doesn't get any better than that. And I do think that the zesty lemon here really makes a difference, ensuring that the cake doesn't get too sweet but still has like a fresh twist to it. This truly is the classic Raffaello turned into a cake Raffaello. I hope you get the chance to make this amazing Raffaello cake at home, and if you like this video, make sure to subscribe, and you can also check out my Entremet cake playlist here. See you in the next video.